Good morning and Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to Rabbi Hillel Silverman, our friend and teacher, who's come this morning to share with us some insights into this morning's Parsha. Good morning, Hillel. How are you today?
Good morning, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So this morning we're going to finish Parshat Bamidbar, the book of Bamidbar, with the double Parshiot of Matot and Maseh. Show us what to look for in this Parsha.
It's a very, very important parsha. The first 14 lines are the basis of a volume of the Talmud. It has to do with taking an oath, making a promise. It begins by saying, Ish ki yidor neder. If a person will take a vow, make an oath, lo yichal devaro, he should not break his promise. Promises, oaths are very, very important, and they should not be broken randomly. It's easy to make a vow, to take an oath. You face a crisis, you're sick, you want to borrow money to buy a home, you want to take on a new profession, a new job, you want your child to go to Yale or to Harvard. You take an oath. If I will succeed, I will make a pledge to my synagogue. I will make a commitment to an organization. In a crisis, it is very easy to be emotional and to make a pledge or to make an oath. It's very interesting at parlor meetings. Organizations have people make contributions, and they stand oftentimes and announce how much they're going to pledge. And a great deal of money has been raised by synagogues, by the Federation, by UJA, by Israel Bonds. The story is told of a man named Cohn. There was an appeal for funds, and he was carried away, and he rose, he got on his feet, and he said, "My name is Abraham Cohn, and I make a pledge of $100,000 anonymously." I doubt whether they will collect his pledge, but the words are very, very important, and we take them very seriously in our religion. A promise is a promise, and we must be careful about what we commit to. In the prayer book, 3 times a day, we recite the silent devotion, Shmona Esrei, 18 blessings. Actually, there are 19 now. And the last one is Elohai Netzor Lishonei Mara. O Lord, keep my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking guile. Promises must be observed. Here we say 18, 19 different prayers to God, petitions to God, but we finalize our silent devotion by saying we must keep our promises. It's as if to say, if we do not keep our word, our goal, our promises, then all of the requests we've made are irrelevant and will not be answered. Words are serious in our religion. Vows are serious in our religion. Promises are serious in our religion. Words are not just sounds. Words are very, very important. Words can hurt and words can heal. On Kol Nidra night, the most sacred night of the year, the evening of atonement, it is called Kol Nidre, all the vows, all the promises. That's the name of the service. Why do we give the name Kol Nidre to the service? Because it's the first prayer that is recited. Incidentally, this is one of the times when members of the Jewish faith will come to the synagogue on time, because they know it's the first prayer. All vows, all promises that will be made to God, not to fellow men, but will made to God, will be forgiven automatically. I think that's quite interesting that on the most sacred night of the year, we don't say to God, forgive us in advance for idolatry, forgive us in advance for robbery, forgive us in advance for adultery, forgive us in advance for blasphemy. We say, forgive us for making promises to you, rash promises that we do not keep. Lo yachel devaro, the Bible says. You shall not cancel your vows. Lo yachel comes from the word chol. It means sand. You shall not make your words profane. You shall not make your words dirty. The Havdalah Friday and Saturday night, we say ben kodesh lechol. Help us to differentiate between the holy, the Sabbath, and the chol, the sand, the profane. When we break a vow, it is profane. A chol hamoed, according to our religion, are the intermediate days of the holiday. The holidays are sacred, but the intermediate days are profane, are secular. It is dirty. It is sordid to make a pledge, to make a promise, and not to keep it. How true that is. Our society is founded upon people keeping their pledges, keeping their promises. The promises that a husband makes to a wife, and a wife that makes to a husband at a marriage. These are promises that must be kept. Our society cannot endure promises that are made parent to child, child to parent, employer to employee, employee to parent. Promises we make to the government. These must be observed. We cannot break our promises. Tov asher lo tidor. Our Bible tells us it is better that you do not make a promise than you make a promise and do not fulfill it. The 14 lines that we read in the Bible this morning are the basis of a book of the Talmud. There are 63 tractates of the Talmud, very, very difficult books. And these words are the basis of one of the Gemara's, Nedarim, vows. It's a very hard, very interesting book. It's 100 pages, but 100 blot Gemara really are double 200 and very difficult. The various rabbis who are mentioned, the various arguments, the various eliminations. Now, it's interesting. I recall today that I studied this volume, Nedarim, Vows, with my favorite professor at the Jewish Theological Seminary. He was Saul Lieberman. Now, I left Yale when I received my BA and found a faculty of great, great scholars. In many respects, they were even more scholarly than the scholars I had at Yale. There was Dr. Louis Finkelstein, who taught theology, the chancellor of the seminary. There was Levi Ginsburg. I had him a year before he retired, a great Talmudist. There was Abraham Heschel, who taught Midrash and philosophy. There was Mordechai Kaplan, who was the founder of the Reconstructionist religion. One of my favorite teachers, H.L. Ginsburg, in Bible. As a matter of fact, I pursued my doctorate and finished it with H.L. Ginsburg. To tell you the type of scholar he was, he devised a grammar for the Ugaritic language. It was an unknown language, was a precursor of the Bible. I remember he told us once a book appeared in Swedish, and it was about the Bible, and he wanted to see what the insights were. So he took the summer off, and he learned the Swedish language so that he could read the book. There was Hillel Bavli in Hebrew literature, Alexander Marx in history. I can't tell you what a wonderful, wonderful faculty I had. But Professor Lieberman, he was my favorite. He was my guru. He was my Talmud teacher. He infused in my heart a love of Talmud. Now, he was my teacher many years ago, almost 75 years ago. But I can see him now, a very erudite scholar, a very handsome man, flashing blue eyes, clean shaven, always well dressed. And he had his methods of teaching the Talmud. We learned from him Nedarim, Vows. It's a peculiar book because it's one of the few books of the Talmud that doesn't have a Rashi. Rashi was a French commentator who explained each of the books of the Talmud. For some reason, there was no Rashi on Nedarim. Either it was lost or he never completed it. So we had a different scholar, Ran. The Ran was the great commentator of Nedarim. But he was different than Rashi. He was very, very abstract, and he would go off on tangents. And this is what we studied with Professor Lehman for an entire year, Nedarim, which is fashioned after the words of today's Torah reading. He had his idiosyncrasies. He was a disciplinarian, and we would prepare and come to class rather petrified that he would call on us because he had his ways of calling on us. Silverman, he would say, read you. Now, read you meant translate the Talmud from the Aramaic, from the Hebrew, and the Aramaic, of the Midrash, and the Aramaic, the Talmud, and then interpret it with Rashi and with Tosfot and give explanations and possibilities. Read you. Or he would say, Silverman, read you. Are you prepared? And I would say, yes, professor, I'm prepared. And he would call upon a student that he didn't like very much. I remember the student's name. It was Hershkowitz. It would be like this, Silverman, are you prepared? Yes, professor. Hershkowitz, read you. Or he would say, Silverman, are you prepared? And I would say, more or less. And he would say, more or less. But his classes were stimulating, and his scholarship was erudite. And I learned so much from him during the year that I studied Nedarim with him. He was my idol. His study was on the 5th floor of our dormitory at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. And that light would be on in the study, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. He was studying. He has produced scholarship which will be studied 1,000 years from now, as the Rambam is studied today. His specialty was the Jerusalem Talmud. There are 2 Talmuds, the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. His specialty was the Yerushalmi, and he will be studied in many, many years to come. So I had a wonderful year, enjoyed every moment of it. By mid-year, I had the idea that I would like to go to Palestine. This was 1947. There was no Israel. I would like to go to Palestine and receive permission to study at the Hebrew University and receive credit for my junior year, so that when I returned, I could become a senior and I could graduate and become ordained. Well, I went to the chancellor, Dr. Finkelstein, to ask his permission. Dr. Finkelstein, I would like your permission to be a student at the Hebrew University and receive credit. Well, Dr. Finkelstein said, you had better ask, or you better consult with Professor Lieberman. Professor Lieberman had the title of rector, which meant really that everybody stood in awe of Professor Lieberman. He made the decisions, big decisions and minor decisions. Well, I went to Professor Lieberman. In trepidation, I said, Professor, I would like very much to go to Palestine and to study for a year and receive credit for my junior year. Silverman, he said, that's very, very nice. I enjoyed you in my class. When you translated the Quran, you translated beautifully. The truth of the matter is, I was confused by the Quran, though my Hebrew was very good, and the classes were all Ivrit b'Ivrit in Hebrew, and he thought I knew what I was saying, and much of the time I didn't. But he said, what will you study? I said, well, I have a wonderful faculty. And I can take courses, listen to this, with Martin Buber in philosophy, with Sir Koenig, the archaeologist, with Meisel, Professor Meisel in geography, with Kassu, the Bible teacher, with Klausner, who was professor of Hebrew literature. He said, fine, Silverman, I give you permission if you study Talmud. You must study months and months of Talmud, and I will examine you, and then you will have credit. So, happily, In May, I went 1947. You know the year. The United Nations was coming out a few months later with a partition decision that Palestine would be divided into two parts, Arab and Israeli. I worked on a kibbutz. I wanted to learn how to milk cows. I wanted to work in wheat fields. They had a new swimming pool. Nobody could swim. They heard I was a Red Cross swimming instructor, a lifeguard. So I taught every child on kibbutz Daphne in the upper galley to swim. And then came the holidays, then came the fall, and I was all set to go to the Hebrew University and study. But I didn't go because there was no Hebrew University. You remember the period? The war broke out. The partition plan was announced in November, the end of November, and the Arabs attacked 5 Arab nations. Almost 1 million soldiers attacked Israel. So I did what any normal American would do. I was in Israel. I was a student. I volunteered. I volunteered for the Haganah, which became the army when Israel became the state. So the year was over. I returned. I went to see Professor Lieberman. Silverman, welcome home. Did you study Talmud? I said, the professor, I didn't study. You didn't study Talmud? Then I can't give you credit for your junior year. But professor, I need the credit. I don't want to repeat another year. I want to graduate with my contemporaries. Well, he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll give you a test. I'll give you a test on 50 block Gemara. And with Rashi and with Tosafot. Now, 50 block Gemara, 50 pages of the Talmud doesn't seem to be a lot, but actually it's double. It's 2 pages, it's 100. And it's very, very intricate, very, very difficult. And I began to study. I studied May, June, July, night after night. Finally, in August and September, it was in September, the last night I was to take my test the next morning with Professor Lieberman, and I studied until 2 o'clock. Now, I studied in the old yeshiva fashion. I sang the words. 2 people found a garment, echad amar motzatiha, v'echad amar motzatiha. One person found a garment, and he said, it's mine, and the other one said, it's mine. On the top of my lungs, I was reviewing the test for the morrow. It was 2 o'clock. I finished studying. I was ready to go to bed. I put on my bathrobe. I put the Talmud on the bureau, and all of a sudden, there was a knock on my door. I can still hear that knock today. It was Professor Lieberman. I completely forgot. It was a summer night. My dormitory on the 5th floor window was open, and his study was on the 5th floor, 1 floor above mine. And obviously, his window was open too. And he heard me singing in the old-fashioned way. And so he said, Silverman, I heard you studying. He didn't say I heard you singing. I heard you studying. And I thought you were having a problem with the text. And so I came to help you. And what would you have done if you were in that position, knowing that Professor Lieberman would test you the next day? I was sure that I was going to blow my test. I said, oh, Professor, I'm so sorry that I disturbed you. I was studying. I didn't need any help anymore. I think I have the answer to the text, and I'll take my test tomorrow. I was certain I was going to blow it, but I didn't. I was fortunate, and I passed it. That is my famous story I'll never forget of Professor Lieberman. It was almost 75 years ago, but that's not the end of the story. The end of the story was told to me by my uncle, who was a distinguished rabbi in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Rabbi Herman Halpern. And he told me that Professor Lieberman was a professor in residence at his synagogue that morning. And he said he told the story. And the story was that here was an American-born student whose parents were born in America. And he was studying the Talmud. He wasn't studying the Talmud, he was singing the Talmud, the way we used to sing it in Slobodka when I was a child, the way we used to chant the Talmud when I studied at the Mir Yeshiva, and now the way I teach it at the Jewish Theological. They learned it at the Hebrew University. And he concluded with this statement. He said, when the voices of the students reach the teachers on the fifth floor, and when the voices of the teachers on the fifth floor reach the students on the fourth floor, then there is a future for Judaism in America. I've never forgotten that. Almost 75 years ago, and he was so right. When we continue to study these ancient texts, when we have professors like Professor Silverman, when we continue to study and adhere to the Jewish tradition, there is a future for the Judaism in America. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. I love this story, and I love your recollections of your time at the seminary, and thank you so very, very much for teaching us. I know you're going to take some well-deserved vacation, get some rest, as am I, and we hope to see you when the month of Elul begins soon to celebrate the coming of the holidays. Take good care.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.